Welcome back to the Resupply with me, Guy Next Door.
And me, Than.
Bringing you your weekly double tap of all things Laserforce and Space Marines, or in this case, this week, a little bit of everything. We have got a couple of special guests. I don't know why we keep using the word special. We have got guests again this week. One of whom is very comfortable by the stage talking to the wider Laserforce community. Welcome back to the microphone, our man Rusty.
Hello. Hello.
What's up?
Hello.
Joining us as well, all the way from Canada.
Hey.
Canada.
The magical land up north. His reputation precedes him, but we'll get into that. Like to welcome this week the man of many code names, but we'll refer to him as his proper name. Welcome to the mic this week, Justin. How are you, buddy?
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
All good, all good. So you're kind of a man of many talents, I hear. We've never actually met in the flesh, but I've seen you, obviously your name pop up on many Laserforce-related Facebook conversations.
Memes, too. A lot of memes, yeah.
What brings you to the pod this week?
That is a very, very good question. What brings me to the pod? Well, I got invited on, or kind of coerced my way on with Brent. We're talking to him, just, hey, we should jump on the podcast, get together, and see what's up. Just kind of add on to the excitement of Nats happening in 10 days. So I thought I'd love to jump on and just, kind of like add to that excitement, stir the pot a little bit, and also let the Force community know that there is Force in Canada. It's very small and minute and just me.
Is it just you?
It is just me and some kids. But yeah, no, I just wanted to come on and say hi and really appreciate the podcast and what you guys are doing, and also pretty cool to talk to Brent. We don't nearly talk as much as we do, so I thought this podcast would be a great way for us to catch up. Hey, Brent. Hi.
Very well put. Very well put.
So, as I'm aware, you guys recently played Armageddon. Is it fully Armageddon?
Yes.
Okay.
Armageddon, yes. We played the U.S. leg of that just this last week. So
whereabouts is it based?
It rotates all throughout the U.S. It's mainly on the east side. This past route was actually through Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio.
Right.
That's the current route, and of course the Detroit location, Revolution Laser Tag or Edge or whatever you want to call it. That place is where we held our Force leg of that tournament.
So how did you find the tournament as a whole?
Tournament as a whole is so much fun. I highly encourage all people to reach out, go to the U.S. Armageddon Facebook group, talk to people who have attended, not just guys like me, but also other people on other systems, and just reach out and see what the word is. It's just a nice big old community of people who just love tag. Unfortunately, it's 2018, like the year of like Fortnite and like Snapchat and going outside, and like it just like I feel like tag at its in some sense is sort of declining a little bit. So it's nice when you can sort of meet people who are just as passionate as you, and maybe it's hard to have those great big like Force tournaments or Laser Quest stuff, but you feel like when you get all these passionate people together off scenes that are not doing as hot as they once were, and you're sort of all together in one bus or in one center playing tag and enjoying it. I think that's all that matters at the end of the day, and yeah, it's a great time.
Yeah, I mean, having done getting back into 2014, it was definitely it's definitely an interesting experience when you get that many people from that many different systems in that many confined spaces over that period of time.
For sure, yes.
for anyone listening to this pod that has not done one, it's very exhaustion and alcohol poisoning inducing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Stay away
So it
from the
would
meat
suit
pies.
Australian people, basically.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah.
You
Yeah.
guys would be great. You guys would be great.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Most
well,
of the Kiwis and most of the Australians would be well suited for it, for sure.
Well, the thing for me that makes it really interesting is that it's not just about like physical skill. You get folks who are not just very passionate, like I said before, but also very like intelligent. So you get people who really understand laser tag at a very deep stage. So you get folks who are maybe just scratching the surface or just trying a bunch of different types of systems, getting their feet wet and this and that. But then say, I teamed up with Scythe and he's, a US Force genius, and the fact that we can play on a same team and really understand each other on this weird level is very nice. So it's also enjoyable to play with folks who have a deep concept of just like laser tag in general or teamwork, and playing with folks who say, like he may not be the best Quest player, but he is a very good teammate. So when I play Quest, which is my home system, it's great to have a guy like Scythe or like Micro on my team who are very intelligent Force players, and just to see that transition into that system. They may not be like physically the best, but like it's one of those things where when they're playing, you kind of know that you have a teammate on your right hand side or at your back, or they're doing something in the maze that they need to be doing at that time. So to be playing with folks that are like minded is a huge treat, and it's very refreshing when you sort of don't have that on a day-to-day basis when it comes to practicing or specific tournaments and stuff. So but yeah, it's a lot of fun. 10 out of 10 would do again. So
it's interesting because like
hint, nudge, nudge. Is it what you're going with?
Well, there's 4 guys here. I think we only need about 4 or 5 more, and then we got ourselves a team, right, guys? So let's get things started.
And Josh took his talents to Cleveland in that recent Armageddon, like his official little podcast announcement that he was coming to Brisbane.
Oh dear.
He's taking his talents to Ohio.
It's interesting because like playing, like I've only really ever played Force competitively as opposed to the other systems, and like even just getting the nuances of one system down is like challenging. It's something that I've like found that you've kind of had to craft over a bunch of years. So it's interesting to me that there's cats who can actually do this over several different sites and still play at a really high level. That shit's crazy to me.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, like Micro is sort of a prime example of like a player who played like Armageddon. He didn't really have much else experience. He was just sort of playing Force predominantly. But then when you sort of like go to Getting for the first time, everything's kind of like a buffet. So it's like you try a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and that. And what's interesting is that you're not playing like most times you're not playing against the very best like zone players or the very best Tron players. You might be facing like a couple, but you're not facing a full out deep team. So you actually have time to actually flex a bit, to try things out, to try like maneuvers out against people who are still sort of like learning, and you can sort of get like your confidence going. You can kind of learn some of the fine tactics of each thing and sort of master and sort of hone that stuff. And now Micro's off playing Zone and a bunch of other stuff, and he's one of the best like system players and stuff like that. So it's a great thing when you are like, hey, like I'm really good at Force, but I'm also good at this, or because of the things I've learned in Force, like you say my aim or my teamwork or communication, or maybe my maze awareness, that really helps me out in Zone. So I think that's sort of like the cool thing, and it sort of happened to me in reverse when I started playing it just as a Quest player. I knew nothing. I haven't really played much else. Toronto is home to like loads of laser tag. Like there's about like 30 or 40 sites within like a 45-minute drive of myself. So I have all types of tag I can play like up here. I'm not just like stuck to one thing. I think for Laser Quest specifically, there's like 7 sites within like a 45-minute drive. So like just of having one thing, it's like, hey, I have my fill of that, but I can also play multiple things. But I didn't really start playing that until I played Armageddon, and that's when I got introduced to like Lasertron, which I really enjoy, or like Storm or Force, for example. So and that's sort of what's gotten my interest in playing more Laserforce specifically, is because I tried it at Armageddon. I enjoyed it. I got nuked a couple times, got reset off a couple times. They just like, hey, this is sort of like a fun thing, you know?
Yeah.
So it happened in reverse for me, which is why I really enjoy playing Force in general, and more so enjoy posting memes in the group. So so I feel like once you get a couple SM5 games, I'm allowed to fully post memes and roast folks. So I think that's the prerequisite. Yeah, hit a certain.
Once you play the game of Commander, you qualify to post memes. And apparently that recently happened, so congratulations.
Yes, which happened for the very first time. I got to play Commander in an actual SM5 game, and not just like, not just a practice game, but like I guess you can call Armageddon somewhat a legitimate tournament, kind of.
Sure.
But yeah,
That's
it was
awesome.
sort of cool because I'm also stuck playing. When I do play SM5, actually with the Detroit guys, I'm usually a scout or a resup or whatever. But I think during one of the very last games, we had Force kind of locked at that point. I think Micro and Scythe were like, you know what, we'll take resupply. Justin, you can play a 3-hit. I'm like, Commander, yank, and I just yanked that card out, tapped myself in, and I had a lot of fun. So awesome. that was cool. It's just the whole point of like the weekend itself. It was just a very positive experience. You had a bunch of passionate people together playing. You're trying new things, and then now next Detroit tournament I play, or wherever Force I play, I'll be fighting for a 3-hit class a little bit more because I got to actually try it.
You got that taste.
Yeah, right. Yeah, love them nukes. So like that was cool. But unfortunately, I only got to drop one. Which is very upsetting. I know Brent's probably like, what? Like, Justin, only one?
No judging on the podcast, all right?
No judging.
At least not while we're recording.
It's a safe place, yeah.
As soon as I hang up the call, I'm going to get booted.
One.
He dropped one? What the fuck was he doing? Holy shit.
Well, the very last game was against like a weaker team, so we didn't really need Micro and Scythe on our 3-hit hit classes, so that would be kind of a bit mean. So we sort of like to rotate the group where people who just typically play resupply or scout will just get rotated through, and then it's like, hey, have a 3-hit and have fun. And of course, Micro will probably still score 10K on ammo, or Scythe will, so it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, we'll still win, but they just want to sort of rotate around for experience and stuff. So, yeah, I got that, rushed the resupply. I got my nuke off like under a minute. It was great. And then just my whole team just, pushed out in the Detroit maze, and we're doing quite well. But I think for halfway through the game, I got stuck at 19 special points, and I couldn't get one more. I just couldn't get one because they were just, my whole team was rolling the other team. So Micro screaming at me, Dice, drop the nuke to get like the last one, because there's a million like hiding places in like Detroit, and I'm just upstairs. I'm like upstairs with my head through like the bars as if I'm in jail, saying I'm at 19, like screaming like I can't drop it. Micro's laughing at me the whole time, and then we got the win on that. But yeah,
I'm impressed that you counted, actually.
Yeah, I was gonna say
that I never do.
Well, rough counted. Like I'm one of those things where I'm really good with like numbers, math, downtime. I think a lot of that is when I play quests specifically. I have people timed very well. So say if they're down, and say if I tag one guy and he's down for 5 seconds, I run around, hit a few more, kind of like how you guys do like resets in Force, and I come back to when that person comes back up. So really good with like multi-targets and managing of time and numbers and stuff. I'm pretty much there, like waiting to drop it, and I'm just like, I just need one more target. I shot both my bases. I can't do anything, and I just have like Micro and Scythe laughing at me the whole time, saying I'm stuck on 19. So like walking out to look at the board and just see the 19 there was kind of embarrassing. But we've all had those games, right?
Welcome to Commander.
Yeah,
welcome to Commander. And you're like, oh, fuck, I finished with 19 again, ruined my life. And you're like, shit, what could I have done differently? Did I miss a reset? Oh, I should have missiled that guy. I would have got an extra special point.
Right, yeah.
On the back, you get depressed, and you start self-assessing too much. It's not that bad, but that's still good that you count.
And then it felt terrible.
I started mostly eating.
You mentioned something interesting, actually. We were talking about it earlier. Transferable, quote unquote, transferable laser tag skills, right? So
sure.
You mentioned being able to sort of take note of when someone's gone down, so you can run around, shoot people, come back, and that's essentially resetting, right?
Sure.
Except you don't have to count, right? So Laserforce is sounding really lazy right now.
Yeah, for sure.
But I heard there was something interesting with people who actually play their own system and potentially running into other people that might be slightly better at playing that same system. Did you have a story about that?
Are you talking about certain, single system players from, say, the UK or something? That
maybe. You know what? Now that you've mentioned it, yeah, it rings a bell. What happened?
A bit on the nose, Brent. No, so what happened this past weekend is that there are a few people in the UK who would consider themselves Force players who attended our tournament, and they're nowhere in comparison of skill in terms of if you compare, say, Brand or Scythe or one of like the other big guys in like the US, but they do have a very firm like understanding of how to play SM5 in terms of like what the basic strategy is of teamwork and communication. So I personally feel that that you don't need to be like the perfect shot in SM5 or the guy who can dodge out of like a missile or do something crazy and this and that the other. I think that teamwork at the end of the day, communication, really gets you quite far in a game like at SM5. So there are guys who just have really good teamwork and communication and have played enough of it to sort of get the hang of things. Now, to that point, it can only go so far when you're facing, Scythe in his home maze. So you can have all the teamwork and the communication and games under your belt, and just when you're playing in the maze like Detroit, that can be very unforgiving at times, especially when there's lots of, grates and lots of, walls and stuff that have holes in it and just odd angles and stuff. If you're not used to playing in a maze like that for Force, it can really turn the tide. So,
if you're used to playing in a maze like that,
sure.
Detroit's maze is that is definitely a very
it's a jungle.
It is
like fucking bombs going off, and it's just that's just how it's ended up.
It's a very
fucking
idiosyncratic maze. It is a very idiosyncratic maze, and it is definitely a maze that takes a little bit of time to figure out where everything actually is, because there are a lot of ways that you can go different paths and get to the same place, but by that same token. And you were mentioning this earlier with your 19 Special Commander game. There are a lot of goddamn places to hide in that maze.
For sure. Yeah. It's very hard. A lot of pockets. On top of that, with Armageddon specifically, we sort of toned down on the SM5 rules a bit, which. You might be, shocked at, oh my god, like we can't touch the rules, they are perfect, and the game has to be run this way because it is the ideal game format, which it is, it's great. But for
don't worry, I get that. it's completely and utterly understandable, and I'd probably support that because no one's got 5 hours to sit there and read the fucking rules. So,
to be fair, I mean, there's definitely, when you're trying to onboard people from other systems to the Force rules, I mean that's definitely something that has always increased the barrier to entry from other systems to Force. But by that same token, I know that there have been non-Force system people that have actually had, kind of sat down and played with the rules, and for some of them there was a definite light bulb moment where it was like, oh, I totally understand now the why, and for Force this does help the overall gameplay for this system, and this, that, the other. And then the flip side of that is that I know there's still a large percentage of the population that goes, no, these things are fucking stupid. You guys are fucking kids. So,
Yeah, well, they're just
roundabouts.
very like odd things specifically. So one, there's certain things where in like a system you're allowed to block and cover and put your hand pretty much right on like the front like sensor. You can do as much blocking and covering as you want. And then there's other ones where it's like you can't even like put your arms anywhere close to your front. So it's sort of like based on what tournament formats the systems have, they can be starkly different in contrast. So it's very hard for newer players to learn like a system where it's like, oh my god, like just like this is different than that, or like we just learned what QZAR is and I'm on that train, and then now I'm doing Force and that's completely different and crazy and lots of rules. So it can be definitely overwhelming at times if you haven't done that sort of stuff. For me specifically, when it comes to like Armageddon SM5, it's again kind of a joke because we have lots of scouts and there's like you can shoot through grates, which can be ridiculous in Detroit. There's just so many things that we sort of like turn a blind eye to, and it's not that we're trying to like decrease the value of an SM5 game, but at the end of the day, we're here to like teach people other types of like laser tag and let have folks have fun and enjoy themselves, and I think that is the be end all at the end of the day. So although it is like a serious tournament and we all like strategize and all that sort of stuff, we have team shirts and we have predictions and fantasy drafts, so we make it as serious as any other tournament out there. At the end of the day, we still want it to be a very positive experience for folks. We want people to have fun at the end of the day, and this is a great breeding ground for future Force players. Or it's like, if it wasn't for like Armageddon, I wouldn't have gone to the East Coast tournament last year. So there's just a certain thing where it's like, hey, like although we're botching the format, it's more or less like, hey, have a sample of what SM5 is like, and if you enjoy it, come on out and play in a Force tournament, which I think a lot of like Greg has, like Redneck Tech and like Logan and a bunch of these guys have come out, and it's like if it wasn't for Armageddon, and also on the flip side, a warm and welcoming Force community such as yourselves, then like we wouldn't be coming out to do this stuff. So I think that's sort of the big deal at the end of the day. And in terms of like changing things, there's been talk about switching to like Masters instead of doing SM5, based on it just being like a not as like intense format to play, which there's sort of a split because a lot of people in the community like playing SM5, but then there's other folks who are just like, man, like for a new player, SM5 is really, really hard. So to have that stress of like, you are the medic and hide on this ramp and don't die and shoot me when you tell me, it's like it can be really like overwhelming, right? So and it's like, if that was
hold your gun up.
Yeah, right. Travel insurance. Yeah, who wants it? Just all this stuff is just like can be super like overwhelming for a first time player. Something that might be a bit out of the box is, I would personally like to see an SM5, and don't boo me or throw tomatoes or anything, but just I would love to see like an SM5 where it isn't elimination based for Armageddon, where say you still have those roles and classes, but the focus is on you're not afraid to like die, if that makes sense.
So I mean, basically, if you want to put not too fine a point on it, that's essentially Space Marines 4. I mean,
right.
That's that. So I mean, obviously, some of the positions do slightly different things because of the lack of dying. But
for sure.
Essentially, what it sounds like you may be looking for there is SM4,
right.
Which to be fair, there are some interesting things you can do with that within the Armageddon format because you can do Space Marines 4 as a 3-team game a hell of a lot easier than Space Marines 5. Space Marines 4 running as a 7.5-minute game doesn't necessarily blow the integrity of the game as much as running 5 as a 7.5-minute game.
Right.
So I mean,
you can't stack nukes, you can't actually die out of the game, but you'd still at least have something a bit different than playing like a shoot and tag Masters, which would probably not do it justice. Yeah, that might work, SM4 over SM5, potentially, because you can still do the missiles, you can still drop nukes, you still need a resupply. and you'd probably have your most important player playing ammo in that sense, just so they can be aware. Maybe.
You also sounded so sad when you said that you can't stack nukes, you can't die.
It's a
Can't
strategy.
kill people out.
It's a strategy. Yeah, I would have been. Oh, look, if I came to Armageddon and we were playing SM4 instead of SM5, I could probably live with you. If I came to Armageddon to play Masters, I'd be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Right.
What changes
Well,
the...
a lot of it too, though, is like, what's the purpose of going? It's like when I go and I play quest games and Armageddon, I'm sort of like having a bit of a laugh, kind of, because they're nowhere close to what I experience in terms of like the national tournaments I've played or the world championships that I've played. So when I'm playing people that hold the gun upside down and are standing the wrong way, I'm sort of like, oh god, like here we go. So it's just sort of this thing where it's, I still like to play my competitive format, but then I'm sort of just in between a rock and a hard place, because I'm like, man, like it really sucks trying to learn at SM5 and the main thing being screamed at you is don't die, which is very important as a medic or a resupply. So it's accurate, right? But at the same time, it's one of those things where it's like is this person having fun? Like they're cowering in like a corner the whole time? Like how is that game experience? Like I'm sure when you guys play a resup class, you're not just cowering, you're being a good teammate and you're moving around and being active. Which obviously a newer player won't be doing as much because they're about to crap themselves, being that person to get yelled at. It's all your fault, you know what I mean? And it's just like, it's sort of this weird thing, because it can be discouraging at times. And, like how I see it, like one bad game of SM5 or any, not just Force, but just any system specifically could just turn you off completely from like a system. So for me, I'm just trying to find like an in-between thing of like, hey, let's make maybe formats a little bit more fun and a little bit more enjoyable, where you enjoy the actual game, and then if you love it, then you can go, fully into like the Force community, the Zone community, etc. So.
You might be shocked to hear this, but there's actually people alive today that enjoy playing medic. Russell?
Me?
Looking at you specifically, I mean, Taipan likes it.
I do.
I think that's at least 2 out of how many people are on the planet at the moment? How many billion? No, but seriously, there's people that enjoy playing medic, because at the end of the day, it is still a role where you can, if played correctly, walk out with 4,000 or 5,000 points, survive, keep your team resupplied, and actually pull boost, get people in and out of resupply. Not like Josh, who doesn't actually need lives apparently. Yeah, Josh, you're not going to live that down, mate. That's just fucking anyway. So there's people out there that can actually contribute, but you're absolutely right. Putting a brand new player who's told to go sit in the corner, duck down, shoot these people when they ask you to shoot them, isn't a good stepping stone for a highly experienced laser tag player going, what the fuck? How is this fun, right?
Right.
So I'd almost say if there's enough Force people playing on the team, someone like Josh or Micro could play medic and do really well at it.
For sure, yeah.
Obviously go, well, this is ultimately how it's played, but finding the balance where you could actually do that depending on, how good the rest of the other teams would be interesting. But I don't think we got segued. What was the conclusion of the UK players?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Randy wants to jab these UK guys.
The UK.
The deal was what was that they came and although they had great teamwork and communication, still at the end of the day, they're not anywhere close to, I'd say, a moderate to advanced Force player in the U.S. and or other places in the world. So I would say they're maybe comparable to maybe a newer or beginner player still in terms of actual. I don't know if you guys do stats or whatever you want, but in terms of like scoring and missiles and nuke drops, I'd say they're pretty much like middle of the road, kind of, just slightly new when faced up against a team of really good players. So and I think a lot of that might attribute to Although we did have a couple guys fly down who play a lot of Force, who are maybe have played Force for a long time. It's oddly enough, it's maybe only one or two that are very good. So it just means that they haven't had that full experience yet to do like a legit team-on-team practice at home, or it's mainly just like, or perhaps they don't even have enough for a full team, so they're stuck doing like a elimination format or doing something solo-based where they've never actually been tested. So when they came here as a full team, and some of them were less experienced than the others, or some were just like, hey, we have a couple guys who understand Force and a couple guys who don't, but we're still might be good enough to pull like an upset here. That obviously didn't pull through, but it's sort of thing where it's hard, it's hard for me to fault certain folks because for instance, for Quest specifically, there's a guy in England, his name is Trixie, and he's one of the best players of all time. He's been playing tag for like over 20 years. He's super good, but just like his teammates or people that he's played with are nowhere close to him. I'm talking like perhaps the second best guy behind him is maybe 80% worse than him. Just there is such a huge
80?
gap. 80%, yeah. There was just such a huge gap between him being like the best player in his country and maybe like top 5 in the world, to guys at his own site who are just nowhere near him physically, mentally, and this and that. So I kind of feel for some of these guys who are very passionate about Force in like the UK and other places in the world that don't have like competitive sites, or say even for me specifically, who again, it's just me up here in Canada as far as I know. It's like I can't properly play SM5. If I want practice, I need to drive down. I need to go to either like a tournament, or I need to go down to Detroit where they do practices and stuff, which is like 4 hours away, which is kind of hard for me to do.
How far is Syracuse from you?
A bit longer. I think it's like five or six around there.
So basically, you are essentially midpointed between those two sites, right?
Right. Yeah. So and at the end of the day, I got to do a coin flip. It's either Josh or Beans. So I'm kind of like, man, like both have cool guys. Both are cool guys who can probably teach me a bunch of stuff about it. But then also I'm stuck like a night in Syracuse. Like, what do I do? Or a night in Detroit? Like, are we playing Smash at Micro's like basement? Like, what are we doing? So you sort of have to weigh these things.
At least Beans would tell you, look, part of Space Marines 5, it's really important to get lives so you don't die. So that's probably better advice. I'd probably go to Syracuse.
Right. Well, I'd say
even though there's nothing to do.
Yeah. If I went to a Q's, I'd be incredibly bored, but I would get a really good explanation of how to play, which is nice. If I go to Detroit, all I get is all the players
you get shot.
Huddled around the roll of like paper towel on the front desk, and everyone just taking paper towel and rubbing their heads after a game, which I think is a standard thing in Detroit that I see whenever I go there.
That's so funny.
No, it's very odd. It just as soon as the game is done, just everyone goes out, Ghosty, Micro, everybody, and just grabs paper towel and just
use your shirt. Take a towel.
Take a towel.
Have you never been to a gym?
No, it is a very bizarre act and ritual that I'm not down with. But
there's no paper towels in Brisbane.
You've run out.
Whether or not you're coming, Justin, don't do it. There's no paper towel. BYOT, bring your own towel.
But yeah, no, it's hard for like a player who is on their own to learn like such a team-based, complicated system where I can sort of understand why like a lot of like the UK guys or people in other parts of the world like to play SM5 and enjoy it and say that like, hey, they're good because hey, I'll play like Masters, or I'll play a game format where I got specials, I know how to missile people, I can drop nukes, I can do fun stuff. But then when they actually apply it like team on team against like a tournament tested player, it just the game's off. So I think before a few of our games where a couple of like the UK guys were like not like trash talking, but saying like, oh, like watch out, like we haven't faced each other or whatever. At that point, I kind of looked at Scythe and Micro, and I'm like, it's time to go 3-hit, boys. And like at that point, and it's mainly just to sort of like prove like a point that it's their house, that they don't want to lose games in their house and this and that. And the whole time, like Micro was like, yeah, I'm down, I'll play whatever, it's good. And Scythe, is just like, bruh, come on, bruh, you know, just like he's happy as the resub.
Don't
He's
even
like, our
need
team
lives.
is good enough. Yeah, our team is good. We only need micro and this and that. But from an Armageddon standpoint too, it was one of like our first systems that we played. So I'm kind of like, hey, I kind of want to like, you know, hit
Get
these
some
guys
points.
hard, right? Get our points, and then also on top of that, it's hard for them to learn the arena and learn the strategies. So if we just wipe them within like a minute or two, just go after their 3 hits and just like kill them, it's going to be hard for them for the following game to actually, you know, set up and do well. So the less time that our competition has in the maze is kind of good for us. So it means that when they play another Force game, they're going to be like, wait a minute, I only got to play half a game last round because it was against like Micro and Scythe. So we really need to iron some things out. So there's a bit of strategy behind the beating, but at the same time, there's one specific guy who's been playing Force for a long time in the UK. His name's Titch. And he was saying in like the 12 years that he's played, or 13 years, he's never been beat down so bad by Micro and Scythe. But he said it was probably one of like the best like moments for him, because it really kind of like put him in check, and he, you know, really enjoyed it. He learned like so much from playing them just that one game. So I think that is sort of like, you
That's
know,
good.
that's the moral of the
Absolutely.
story, or it's like, hey, like this is a cool thing that happened out of this beating, you know. So so I think that should be like the focus of things, where it's like, hey, like you sort of, it's much like, you know, again, I don't know the complete history with you guys, but it's much like when maybe like Rusty came here for the first time, or like when, you know, you guys went there and you got to see like the level of competition was very different between your two countries. So
There have definitely been some very eye-opening and interesting moments throughout the years, either with sites going to other sites, or, you know, going to a new country to play for the first time. Yeah, there have definitely been some very, very eye-opening moments as far as that goes. But one thing I did kind of wanted to jump back to, Justin.
Sure.
You had mentioned that you did make it to one of the East Coast tournaments last year.
Oh yes.
So I'm really kind of interested in your perspective on a Force tournament from an outside Force perspective. I mean, because
Sure.
obviously, you know, we run things a little bit differently, in as much as, you know, playing the you know, 2 15-minute games to get a match.
Sure.
with the flipping, and it's only ever 2 teams, and, you know, and this, that, and the other. And, you know, I know over time, you know, we've definitely had some, as a community, we've had some interesting challenges with reffing and timing and time slipping and things like that. So with all that sort of lead up, I'm really interested in your perspective on a Force tournament from a non-Force player perspective.
Well, yeah. The East Coast last year was my first like full out real Force experience that wasn't really like getting related, or wasn't like practices or anything.
Was that at
where I had to play
Syracuse
Force games.
or in Detroit?
That was in Detroit.
In Detroit, okay.
Yeah. So, and this was like soon after the whole like team solo Ray thing. So like it was sort of like a very big event in my eyes. I think it was more or less like the Detroit guys were like kind of like getting their home back. They were putting their roots back in. So I think that it was really cool to see a lot of like the Detroit folks there, and we had a pretty good turnout. It was a lot of fun. I guess from like an outsider perspective, like first and foremost, man, it must be so hard to run events during the week. Like that must be so brutal in terms of like the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday doing like tournaments. It's, you know, I've never experienced something like that in like the 10 plus years that I've played. We've always done like overnights on the weekend or whatever. So I can really feel for you guys when it's like, if people can't go, or if it's like you got like one good player or one good 3-hit on your team, that you're like, this guy is like a rock of our team or our foundation, and then it goes, oh, I got work, or like I can't attend this because I got this or the other. It's like that must like sure, I'm sure you can find a person to replace them, but like, you know, at times it's like, man, if you lose like one guy off the team, that can be like death to a community or death to a site to some extent, where it's like, man, this guy can no longer play because of work or whatever, like even family commitments and this and that. That must be hard. So I really feel for you guys when you have to deal with super long days, and during the work week as well, it can be quite hard. So that was sort of like a first observation that I had. I'm like, man, it must be really hard to like get like a unit together and then also commit to playing a few times a year under these circumstances. So
last year was brutal in Sacramento.
Yeah,
because we ran from like midday to midnight, and it was just it
was awesome. I had a really good time.
Because then we would record a podcast after each day.
Oh yeah,
and then like
I
go
was
home and
I was
cut it.
anti-podcast back then.
you freak.
He's all in now.
I'm out.
well, like I can sort of like understand like Nats being like a full week. It's like, hey, like we're gonna be going to like a different country for a full week, so it means like, hey, I gotta book off a week to travel. I gotta like, I'll spend half the time like sightseeing, being a tourist, and then hot tubs, doing like whatever you guys do. It's like that's cool, but I guess it's more so from that like beginner stage of like, hey, like I met these guys Thursday night and they're talking about doing tournaments and this and that. Hey, do you want to like spend some time, like like say like a few days off in like Syracuse? We're gonna drive there to play like an SM5 tournament. That sounds great. And then it's like, is it Friday night? Nope. And it's like, oh, so it's just it's like, okay, like check that off, or I'll see you at the next like members night on Sunday. So it's one of those things where like I can understand why this format takes such a long time to run and make it proper and fair, and that you need that time during the week to run it. But it's hard for a lot of players who just have life stuff that just sucks, so and I feel that in Quest too. Although we do stuff on like the weekends, it's still that same stuff comes up where it's like, hey man, we got family, got kids, we got work, part-time jobs on the weekend. It's rough. So I tip my hat to all you Force guys who can make it work, because it's such a huge time commitment and long days, and the amount of practice as well that you guys also put in to actually master these positions and teamwork and strategy and this and that, and then also having long days of practice too. It's rough. Yeah, I can imagine like that plus tournaments. That's a lot of sick days, so
yeah.
I feel like with Quest though, being able to run on weekends, I feel like they have a advantage in that regard, in as much as I know in the past like every Quest site was corporately held. So is that still the case, or have I been away from Quest for too long?
They're still corporately owned, but just the thing is, most of our Quest stuff, it's at night, so we usually run stuff all night, starting at like 11 o'clock or so until like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So we usually try to bang it out all in one night. Our games are also shorter. So then I know that at times you guys have like constellation brackets and lower brackets that you guys run too. We're like a bit more cutthroat with a lot of things. So sometimes you only play 6 games and that's it, and then it's done, which can be a bit brutal. But then again, if you're in like Vegas, who cares? So it's one of those things where it's like we'll all fly to a big tournament in Vegas and enjoy ourselves, play the tag thing, and that's more or less a reason to get us all together. Is more or less the Quest. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, you are right though. It is sort of that off-peak time. So the plus side for you guys is that if you are playing on a Monday or a Tuesday or a Wednesday, there's not a lot happening there to begin with. So you guys can have that freedom and flexibility to run what you want, which I think is huge. Whereas with Quest, I can't like, hey, can we start at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on like a Saturday? They're just gonna laugh at me and be like, I got birthday parties that are gonna make me way more cash than your Nerd Fest. So that's sort of the flip side to that stuff, where it feels like in my scene specifically, or a lot of other scenes, there's a bit of compromise, or we gotta play at night, or we gotta do this or that, the other. Where I think with you guys have your blocks aside, and you're like, hey, screw it, we're gonna do it how we want, and that's sort of the appeal. You guys get to do whatever you want, so that's huge.
And to be fair, also, I mean, we definitely have done weekend overnight tournaments,
Sure.
But I mean, the challenge that you start running into there is yeah, it's like, okay, well, if we've been using the packs from, midnight to, 7 in the morning, and the facility's supposed to open at 10 with birthday parties,
Right.
are the packs getting that full charge that they need in those 3 hours
Sure.
to be able to, last through the entire day of birthday parties? And also, I mean, this is more, like, at this point, I think I'm way too goddamn old to be playing, from midnight to 8
Absolutely, yeah.
8 in
Too
the
old to
morning
be
for
playing this kid's game.
3 or 4, three or
Right.
4 straight days for trying to get that to happen.
Speak for
Oh, yeah,
yourself,
sure.
mate. Jesus. Well, I was gonna say that actually, because by the time Thursday or Friday comes around during a Nats and you've played probably close to 30 games, depending on the position, if you're Russell really enjoying medic and you haven't had to run much, well, it might be different. But playing
Right.
30 odd games of Commander, the legs start getting a little bit tired, and literally it can come down to the last day to see whether or not you can not mentally do it, but sometimes physically get that reset or get that shot off or get to where you need to quick enough. So, you sort of have to leave it all out there essentially. I've had some pretty awesome blisters from playing way too many fucking games of Commander, but that's half the fun.
Every time I
think.
see
Yeah,
you,
right.
you're covered in like bruises and grazes and like bleeding
Oh,
from
fuck.
somewhere. And
Some
There hasn't
neon
been
paint
one
on his
tournament
shins,
I have not actually fucking done something to like make myself bleed or cut something or just the
or crash a
most
luge and like fuck up your knee.
That was after the tournament, so that was strategic.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about that. Those bad times.
It's poor memories.
Super poor planning on somebody's part. Probably yours.
What, that I didn't fucking almost tear my ACL off before we played the tournament?
That would have
Yes,
been nice.
yes,
It would have helped
yes.
us out.
Yeah.
Who would that have been good for?
Me.
I would have been,
Yeah.
It would have
Me
been
and
good
Van.
for me and Steve-O and the rest of our team. Come on. This is,
and then we never would have had the totem pole, so you know what? I don't regret
That's
it.
true. That's true. But then Tham wouldn't be like waking up in a cold sweat every night.
you jackass.
So, we could do one or two things. We could keep yarning, because actually that went by really quick, or we could cut it.
So, okay, so I think we've covered a good wide amount of stuff on this cast. I think, it should be interesting to, more than just us, so people will, hopefully listen to it. I was actually mildly annoyed at Havoc, because he's like, yeah, I don't listen to the podcast, and then we do one with Josh. He's like, okay, now listen. I'm like, God damn it, Scott, I hate you so much. I mean, I don't.
It's,
I actually,
as soon as you drop it in like the Armageddon groups or whatever, it'll be like, okay, like now we have folks. I guess some folks will buy into it a bit more, because like, wait, we're talking about like Armageddon. That might be cool. So
It helps when you
hopefully
know.
we get those people in, and get them listening a bit more and less complaining like Scott sometimes. So for sure.
No, I mean, to be fair though, like I've known Scott now for like 20 plus years because of the old alt sport, the laser tag.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Usenet group, like, so that's how long he and I go back. And like, but the first time I actually met him was in 14. And,
right, for the first time, yeah.
And it was fucking hilarious, because he like showed up and I walked in, I'm like, you're Havoc. Yeah. I'm like, huh. I fucking hate you, and I walked off. It was fucking fantastic. But yeah, no, it's he's a good guy.
Yeah, no, he's cool, and like we're good friends and stuff. It's that there's certain things that we disagree with, like ideology wise, for like tag specifically, where we've come to terms of being like, you know what, let's agree to like disagree on stuff, because there's just some things that we're never going to see eye to eye on completely. But
For sure.
that said, like he is a very good like laser tag mind, in terms of he does have a lot of strategy, and he really knows a lot of like systems like inside and out. So to have that person in the community is great. He might be a little bit like over the hill right now in terms of like his care for things, in terms of like he doesn't care as much. Like I think for this past like weekend he was just playing Pokemon Go, and he was like having fun, and that was sort of like the key thing. But at the end of the day, to have someone like him involved in the community is like super huge.
Is a plus, yeah. No, for sure.
It is, but I totally get the whole sparks flying because we had a bit of that at East Coast where myself and Havoc got to play with like Scythe, Juan, Micro, and Ghosty, and it was just sort of like crazy from the get-go because their personalities didn't go together so well.
Oh my god!
Just like it was just
Jesus!
It was fireworks like crazy.
In
Yeah,
what
even
respect?
myself. Yeah.
Who was stirring the pot?
Yes.
Are we-
The answer to that question would be yes. In that.
Are we still
in that case.
recording here, or no? Should I be saying
The
this?
edit
No.
stick.
Yeah.
No, it just got messy and crazy and dramatic. I think at the end of the day, I think you've all experienced this when you play Force. When say like you're playing with like Sacramento and like maybe a guy from Detroit goes and plays on the team, and they're playing like a resup or something, and they're just not used to how you make that call for resupplies. So some folks hold their gun up, or they'll openly say what they need. I need lives. I need shots. I need both. So it's just sort of like this weird mix mash of, I guess each region does their more or less own thing.
Yes.
Whereas,
that's accurate. That is so accurate.
So when Havoc and I went to go play East Coast, we're sort of like, hey, like we're not really like we're sort of like in the community's eye, we're not really Force players. You know what I mean? We're just sort of guys who have a lot of experience playing Force and are good teammates, and that should be enough when you have guys like Micro, Scythe, Juan, and Ghosty there. It should be enough. But the issue that we sort of ran into was that there was a communication breakdown between half the team and us because we just couldn't get on the same page of what we were doing. So and that caused a lot of friction, a lot of fighting. A lot of I quit, no, just like all this back and forth stuff that was completely negative at the time, and it just took Josh. The reason why I respect Josh Scythe so much is that he is a really good, captain, or a really good guy who can just get everyone on the same page or get us all like not heated, calmly explaining what needs to get done, and just gets us all kind of in the right mindset. So we really needed a guy like him to sort of mediate between the miscommunication of the guy screaming of what we're doing wrong to us asking what do we need to do right, so where I think a lot of us we learned quite a bit from that experience, that tournament playing together, but a lot of it just takes a lot of clear communication and just like listening at the end of the day. And once we sort of ironed out that stuff, we took down the tournament, which is fun. So I think that was sort of a huge thing for me, a huge win for me in terms of all like the laser tag that I've played, is that we dealt like with a full like weekend of fighting, and of course the Detroit breakdown, which is apparently a very popular thing in tag. So just
it's a weekly thing.
It's a weekly thing, yeah. So for me it was a great experience, and I love those guys tremendously. Like, I just love them, that whole site there, like all the members there, and they're all great friends. So I'm glad that we got that experience, buried the hatchet there, and just we had a great time at the end of the day. But I think at the end of you really need just to have that communication. If it's not there, if you're just sort of like, hey, we're gonna run games how I want to run them, you need to be like, no, we need to sit down from commander to medic at the end of the day and make sure that we all know what we're doing, like what needs to get done, what's crystal clear, what our roles are, not to run away when this happens. Just like there's just certain things that people might take that for granted at times. Say if you're playing on an all-star Force team, I'm sure they've been toppled before based on the lack of communication or like the lack of what we need to do. I'm sure that if you polled like all 10 of the top like Brisbane guys and you asked what plan B was, you might not get the exact answer each time. So
hold your gun up. The only answer.
And if someone says differently, then Brent's going to pick up a kettlebell and smack somebody in the head, So
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So I'm sure that you guys can sort of relate to all that stuff, right? In the sense that you need to have a team that understands fully what they need to be doing and what their roles are, and not to play Top Gun or not to be the hero or not going for a certain all-star scout and that's what their focus is. It's like, no, it's the team is the focus, succeeding is the focus, learning is a focus. So I think that once you get on a team like that and everyone's crystal clear of what needs to get done, then you're going to have great success, win or lose. So I'm very glad I got to that experience.
Part of running like Space 5, I think like having the fact that there's a medic and that your team can die out is what is like a major key for why it's such a team focused game versus like Space 4. So like Space 4, you have to worry about dying out. Sure, you have to worry about shots, but you don't really have to protect your ammo, if that makes sense.
Sure, yeah.
So like, I think that's probably why the transition to, or the learning gap is probably narrower to pick up Space 4 in a competitive setting than it is Space 5. Because if you don't have that team chemistry, it makes it so much harder.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, so back in Sacramento, we're going back to the original opening of Sacramento. So back in like '97, because February '97 was when Sacramento Laserforce originally opened. Apparently, they tried SM5 to start with, and they couldn't wrap their heads around it. It didn't make a ton of sense. Now this initial trialing stuff, this was actually before my time being a league player there. So this was way early. And then they found Space Marines 4x3, and Space Marines 4x3 was the official league game in Sacramento. I want to say up until early '99.
Wow.
It literally was not until early '99 that we made the changeover to SM5, or maybe it was late '98, one of those two. And even then, we were playing 10-minute SM5, not 15 minutes. So there was this whole evolutionary process that happened there, where I was like, okay, this game, with no one to really kind of show us the way, as it were, was super complex. But hey, Space Marines 4, which is pretty much checkers. Seriously though, if Space 5 is chess, Space 5 is chess, Space 4 is checkers, and you can thank DK for that analogy, because he made that analogy many years ago, and I've just always stolen it because it's fucking fantastic. But so Sacramento ended up having this year and a half, 2 years of playing checkers before kind of going, well, let's revisit chess, and and moving that along. So there's at least
Auckland was the same. Before I started playing competitively, they were playing predominantly Space 4 up here, and it wasn't until I'm pretty sure you cats from Wellington came up and basically taught our site how to play Space 5.
So I've got this will segue really nicely back to what Justin said earlier. So there's nothing better than someone talking shit, getting shat on, and then being humble about it and wanting to get better, which is obviously what happened with this guy from the UK, and I think that was ultimately going to be the point of the story anyway. And then you've got other people who, it doesn't matter what you tell them or how much better other people are than them, they won't listen. It's everybody else's fault. It's their team's fault. They can never hold themselves accountable or reflect on what they did right or wrong. Anyway, I remember this fondly, actually. So we drove up from Wellington to Auckland, and you should put this in the podcast, Steve.
Oh, all of this is going to stay. I'll find a way to make it stay.
So we showed up, and I don't think you guys have played Space Marines 5 at all. So it was the year 2000, so I hadn't been to... Wait, what year would that have been?
A little after that, because we opened in 2000.
So it would have been like 2001,
probably.
Probably late 2001.
Super early. And we played Space Marine 5 and sort of showed you how to play or whatever from memory. And look, it didn't go very well. But I can't remember who it was. There was a couple of people, and they're like, look, we'll play you at Space Marines 4 and we'll fuck you up.
Probably Diablo or Trips or...
I know.
I honestly couldn't.
Nightmare.
Oh yeah, that guy.
Nightmare, yeah.
There's a few names there. Anyway, that was one of those moments. And I only started playing, other sides and competitively or whatever, not long after that. But it was one of those moments where I'm like, fuck, I really don't want to talk shit because stuff like this happened. It was a joke. Like, we fucking just crapped on everybody. And back then, yeah, I wouldn't say we had the greatest players. It was like me and Whipple and Stallion and
Truth, probably.
Truth, yeah. We
Gray
still
play?
Yeah, Gray was flying around. And I don't think Baden would have come. But yeah, I don't remember. I obviously can't remember scores, but it wasn't close. Like, it was just a walking reset. I might have been playing heavy, and it was just when you find someone as ammo, you can just reset people for days. So yeah, it was like one of those critical points early on when I was like, there's no point talking shit because you don't know who you're going to end up playing against.
Sure.
And I think this would speak volumes for, like, if I ever came and played Armageddon, I'm like, I'm going to fuck you guys up in zone or whatever. Like, you'd never hear the words come out of my mouth. In fact, even if there was like a UK team, for example, coming and we were playing at some Laserforce arena somewhere in America, you wouldn't hear me say a fucking thing about how I think we would do until we play them. Because guess what? Maybe they got really fucking good and they're going to shit on us. And I'd rather not take each game as it came and on face value. But look, I think as long as people approach it the right way and take constructive feedback on board and apply it to try and get better, and that's their personality and they want to talk shit, that's cool. But if you get shit on for 6 months or a year and you don't get any better and you're still saying you're going to beat people, you're a dick. That's it.
End of story.
That's it.
Well, the odd thing too, or not odd thing, the what I like about Force specifically above the arrest is that I think it's mainly about making good choices. It's not so much about, stacking nukes and doing all this cool stuff, and getting your bases. Like, all these things are very, like, prerequisite, sort of important. But I think it's all about making good choices for yourself and for your team. And what makes, I guess, the game interesting for me is that, like, I know that when I was learning SM5, I'm like, oh, I just shoot my bases and I shoot people, pew, 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 and that's all my mindset was as like a scout, which you could argue that's what a scout does. But at the end of the day, I was, like, talking to Josh, talking about strategies and stuff like that. But, like, a scout can do way more than just being that pew, pew, pew guy.
Yeah.
And for me to learn from Josh specifically how to play a scout and to play that role was, like, a very critical piece of why we won East Coast.
Wow.
Was I was playing the class properly. Sure, he reset me to Elim the guy, but that is
if he's got a missile off it, I support that decision.
Yeah, correct.
I would use my medic as a reset to get a missile off to kill him out of the game if
right?
I had
But that's sort of the thing is that that specific example was, I think Josh was calling, saying, like, Dice over here, like, and of course I'm like, here's my shining, like, moment, or I'm gonna go over and hit the guy and I'll get him out. There's gonna be a parade, there's gonna be confetti, and sure enough, Josh comes, shoots them, resets me, and I'm sitting there like clipping my, like, laser. I already know, but I just clipped the laser. I'm like, you reset me, didn't you? But it's certain, but, like, it's certain things like that where I think, like, if you compare me with, like, the best scout in the game, that guy can probably wreck me 9 out of 10 times, but we can make similar choices in a game, or make the exact same choices, which makes us equally effective and equally dangerous in an actual game. So I think that was the big lesson for me when I played East Coast. When I played with Josh, I'm just like, hey, like, is this correct? Is this right? Should I be doing this? Like, should I be doing that? And then he would, like, no, you're spot on. Keep doing exactly what you're doing. Because as long as I know that that's what you're doing, then I can execute what I need to do as commander or 3-hit or whatever class he needs to play. So, and
then also the great thing with the decision making, or both the great and the terrible thing all at the same time, is that sometimes you get into these situations where the right in quotes decision isn't actually the right decision.
Sure.
You know, you get these things where it's like, well, conventional wisdom says I should do A, B, and C in this order because that's what works like 90% of the time. But because of how the game is going right now and what I'm seeing with how this is reading, I need to actually go like BCA. You know, I need to actually I need to actually make these choices slightly out of their normal order because, you know, something within the game flow isn't flowing how it would normally go.
Sure.
And one of the things that does separate, you know, really separates mid-tier tournament players from the upper and top tier is the ability to recognize within a game flow that something isn't quite as you're expecting, and the ability to make the decision that's appropriate for that moment, not necessarily the decision that, oh, I think I need to do this because this is what I've always done. So and I think that obviously applies to any system. You know, there's always going to be times where you know, just because you typically always do, you know, the ABC thing. Oh, this is not reading correctly. I need to do this thing over here that's actually going to have way more positive impact. And you know, and trying to get that sort of game awareness. That's definitely the piece that, you know, you spend a lot of time trying to build, and some people never get it. And honestly, that's okay. You know,
it's not okay. It's
not everybody. Not
for Brent though. It's not okay for him.
Not everybody is always going to read everything 100% the whole time. But if you've got players like that on your team, you just kind of have to, you know that, okay, they're always going to read the game a certain way. They may miss, you know, X, Y, Z. You plan accordingly.
Sure.
But in saying that, you know, half the battle is having the presence of mind to actually ask the question, which so many people don't do. So, you know, if you go to Josh and say, hey, you know, I did this and this and this. Do you think this is a good approach? Yep, maybe no, do this, do this. At least you'll take it on board and go, all right, well, I'll do that. So, like, yeah, and that's probably more to your point around Armageddon. You've got all these people coming together and trying to, you know, work as a team. And I think that's probably the biggest attraction, right? Because, as everybody knows, I haven't played anything other than Laserforce. So I'd be a fucking sponge. I'd just be watching every person. I wouldn't give a shit if they're on my team or not. I'd be like, so why did you do this? Why did you do that? Why did you stand here? Why did you come around the corner? Where would you have gone after this? Why did you do that? Like, it would just be... and again, I think if you might even pick, or you would absolutely pick up certain things from other systems, I think that you could almost take back to relate to other systems as well. So,
that is,
you know, that's ultimately how I would be looking at it. It'll be like, all right, so if I improve at this particular system, how could I, you know, relate that back to how I play Laserforce and do certain things. So, you know, and more to the point, if you're asking questions, you're humble about it, and you want to get better, you're just going to be a better player than someone who looks at it negatively, thinks they're always right, and doesn't ask for feedback, or at least take it on board. And I used to, back in the day, try and help people, and I'm like, why would you do that? This, you know, maybe you could this. And I've just stopped because now I don't give a shit, because unless I actually want to ask the question and have a conversation around getting better, I'm just wasting my time, as you would be. Like if you were trying to teach someone who just didn't give a shit about what you knew and what you could share with them, well, again, you're wasting your time. You might as well go buy another bottle of vodka for the buck.
Right. No, but yeah, and it's true though, because it's such a fine line, because it's like, for instance, like I got into it with like Ghosty a whole bunch at the tournament, and it's not vodka? That he was doing and drinking vodka and force but just in the sense that like it was like, you know, he was set on doing recep a certain way, and I was trying to grasp the way that he was doing it, as it was different than me. So when I was asking him questions, obviously that is the worst thing to hear as a Force player, is that, hey man, my medic is asking me how to do this, that, the other. So I can totally 110% understand his frustration in dealing with a newer player to the scene. It's like, man, I'm stuck with, I gotta like handhold this guy and whatever. But it just took that one explanation, like after a game, like once, you know, the yelling and the blaming is cooled down and all that stuff that comes with tournaments. Like once all that cools down, we can actually have a conversation as to why he does things a certain way. And you know, and to his credit, he's a great medic. He's really good. And for me, it's like I need to understand why he does those things and how I can incorporate that into my own game, and how I can be like a better resup or a better scout supporting him, or a 3-hit or whatever. So it just, I think we all need to have those moments where we're open to having an honest conversation, because as long as we all know like what we're doing and what the plan is, I'd rather get all those bad questions out of the way before the game, as opposed to after the game when it's a blame, who did this and who did that and whatever. So I think part of it too is that you need to be open to asking those really dumb questions, which I have no shame in, because I'm like, hey, I'm not trying to prove myself as being like an amazing Force player, although I am the best Canadian Force player and worst. So I can go up and down, it doesn't matter. So I have nothing to lose and prove. So for me, it's like, hey man, I'm gonna ask as many questions to make sure there's no doubt in my mind that when I play an actual game, I'm doing the correct thing, and I understand what my team is doing at all times.
A good thing. That's what you want out of your players, like especially seemingly at a Geddon tournament, that like you rely on the people who their hope, like this is the game that they play the most, so you rely on their expertise. And Geddon seems like one of those competitions where, you know, guys should be kind of in those mentor roles, providing that people want to ask them questions about it. You know, it's like what Brent said about people who think that they're hot shit and they actually don't want to, you know, learn. You can't do much with those people. But
no,
they can't. On that though, you can't mistake people that are shy or potentially introvert as, you know, in the same boat as those people. Because some people just, you know, find it hard to ask for help, or find it hard to talk with people they don't really know that well.
Yeah, sure, yeah, and I totally know that face, that face that when you ask that like question and you see Ghosty mad at you, you see Micro mad at you, and just it's that bruh, like seriously, you know. So like I've had that face. It's not a good face, but it just that, you know, for me as like a player who's wants to learn and wants to get better time over time, it's like that's the only way to do it. You got to ask those questions. You got to be a good teammate, and you got to have that honest conversation. As you know,
guys at our side, like when we get new players come through and they you know, actually ask me a question, I love it, because it shows that they actually engage. Yeah, I'm gonna give someone the
disappointment.
Bruh.
Someone who's been playing for 8 years asked me a dumb question, I'm gonna give them the bra face. But
sure, of course.
But for new cats, like if you've only been playing a year or two, or you know, it's your first or second night ever playing, someone comes and asks me a question, man, I'm all over that. That shit, I love that shit. It's great.
Yep, the offer's always there.
Yeah, and just a small tidbit or fun fact, I found out that the Loveland Laserforce guys are sending a team to a national Laser Quest tournament next month.
Wow!
So,
really?
It's happening in Colorado. So I'm kind of like, whoa, that's kind of cool that these guys, they didn't play like Armageddon. They don't really have a lot of quest experience. So I think it's kind of cool that we got a lot of like cross like system play going on, where some of our guys come play Force events, and then out of the blue, the Loveland guys are going to come play a quest event in Denver. So I think that's like super huge for like both of our scenes. So I'm glad that things like, you know, our Facebook groups exist, this podcast exists, and just stuff that just like promotes crossplay, because I think we're all passionate about what we do, and we all enjoy the laser tag, and we all enjoy the drinking and the partying and the socializing and just having these friendships from miles and miles away. So I think that I'm glad that there's a lot of people out there, regardless of what we play, that are just all about that, which is huge for me. And yeah, it's rad. It's
when
cool.
you attending Armageddon next, Brent?
On that note,
yeah, yeah.
Nice segue into some sort of commitment. You know what? You never know. I did make it pretty clear what team I'd probably want to end up being on to learn. Yeah. Let's just put an asterisk there and say, watch this space. But didn't you say you this was your last one? These famous last words.
I've heard that so many times from fourth players.
Right? It's never the last one. I've said this when I won like Quest Worlds and Nationals. I've done a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, it's the last one. But I always come crawling back because I'm a glutton for pain, apparently.
Yeah.
Though for Armageddon, I've won. This is my fifth win, so it's 5 years in a row that I've won.
Nice.
And so it's one of those things where I'm sort of like over it playing wise, but I'd love to come and like ref the event, or I'd love to come and like help promote the event. So I still want to be there and have fun with people and seeing all my friends again. But maybe I'm a little bit like overplaying, because the playing aspect I don't have a lot of fun with.
What are you doing in 2 weeks?
Does someone have a
nice segue
available?
into that?
Hell yes.
Commit.
Yeah. Dude, if you bought a plane ticket, we'll make space for you.
Yeah, if folks
You can
have,
ask all the
travel
questions you
points.
want. There'll be no bra face.
Yeah, no bra face in Brisbane.
There's duty free on the way in. You'll be loving life.
Hey guys, if we can get the GoFundMe like going, get a couple months each stay, I will be down there in a heartbeat, guys.
Surely there's some sort of Canadian sponsorship thing from the government. I'm just putting it out there.
If we can monetize the podcast, that would really help me out. So I'm just throwing that out there right now.
It's sponsored by the resupply.
1 cent per view.
All right, cool. Well, that's probably a good place to leave things, right?
Yeah.
I think so.
Perfect.
Yeah.
GoFundMe. We'll
Go
put the link in the
find me,
description.
guys.
Well,
And I'll
yeah,
see you down there.
there'll be a link in the description. Make
Oh,
sure.
please do.
Maybe not.
Yeah, probably not. Not gonna happen. Sorry, guys.
It'll just
Sorry,
send you back to the podcast, and you have to listen for the second time. Well, I mean, thanks, boys, for joining us today. This was actually amazing. Beans is gonna have a shit fit when he sees how long this part is, but you know, so be
Whatever.
Beans the attention span of a fucking 3-year-old.
just skip through the end.
It's a wall with a fly on it. Yeah. Sorry, Beans. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
But thanks Ian Rusty for coming on, man. Like, it's always nice to hear from you.
Yeah, it was great.
I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks.
You certainly will, Justin. It was a pleasure talking to you, man. Like, I'm looking forward to the day that we get to meet in the flesh. That'd be super
For sure.
duper.
Yeah.
Thanks, Hot Water. Still
Best
die.
of luck in 10 days, guys.
Thanks,
Best
man.
uh,
of luck.
We'll be
Thank you.
we'll be putting out all sorts of media during the tournament, so everyone can stay up to date with all of the crazy
things
happening. Yeah.
And a live stream of the board. I'm guessing someone set that up, or should. So
Yeah,
hopefully.
yeah. There's all the usual stuff that we've been doing the last couple of years is all going to be happening. I think there's some last minute
And
details
more,
that
right?
have to be, and more.
Hopefully
So
more, yeah.
yeah. That's the plan right now.
But for this week, I have been Guy Next Door,
And I've been Than.
and always remember to backtrack, kids. We'll see you next week.